Next up, we live in an unhappy age of political pygmies, fallen idols, and don't get your hopes up. But there are still some people to respect. Each panellist is going to choose an admirable politician or activist who hasn't let them down yet. Like an award-winning coming-of-age story set against a backdrop of momentous events, there are bonus points for anyone whose personal good times coincided with a sense that history was on their side. And now, this was a set question at the Q Awards a few years ago, and every pop star I spoke to chose Greta Thunberg. So I'm going to institute a Greta ban, Gret Zero, to keep things interesting. John, you are our guest, so who's yours?
I'm going to go with my oldest friend, oldest in the sense that he's 90, and that is Lord Alf Dubs of Battersea, who I've known since I was 22, and he gave me a job in the House of Commons, and I worked for him in my first proper job as his researcher. I went off and became a writer. He lost his seat in 87, and I remember saying to him, "Oh, don't go into the Lords, Alf. What? People are going to think you've betrayed the left." And he went into the Lords after he lost in 92, and he has been a model of how you can be an effective opposition leader in the second chamber. He is still at the ripe old age of 90, successfully campaigning on unaccompanied minors and refugees. Just this year, he was about the only person campaigning on unaccompanied Ukrainian children, and got a change that means that over 1,000 children managed to get to Ukraine, to hear from Ukraine. That was reported in the Mirror in February. And Alf was the only one campaigning on that. We know about the Dubs Amendment, which meant that about 500 Syrian children could get over here. And Alf Dubs does this with enormous humility, which is very rare in a politician. He's an absolutely charming bloke. And he himself, of course, was an unaccompanied child refugee back in 1939, coming over from Czechoslovakia. So beat that, everyone, if you can.
You interviewed him, didn't you, Dorian, recently?
I did for The Bunker,
yeah.
recently. And he was just quite happy to abolish the Lords, even though he is perhaps the best argument for the Lords. He's just like, no, I don't mind if you get rid of it.
No, he believes in an elected second chamber, but he's being effective within the system as it exists. And I was proud to be the Master of Ceremonies at his 90th birthday party at the House of Lords this year. And he was very ill earlier this year, and he was in intensive care. And I went to see him when he was in hospital, and I thought he's come back out of it, and he's campaigning hard, and we should be very grateful that he's still going so strong.
That's fantastic. And how nice that there's actually a friendship that goes back.
Yeah, it goes back a long time, yeah.
Rachel.
I really struggle to think of a politician, which is not to say that I don't think there are politicians doing good things, but this is quite a high bar. I think for this question. So I have gone for the disaster planner Lucy Easthope, who I've just found out was also interviewed on The Bunker. You looked very excited there.
I've just been reading a piece about disaster planning, a profile of her, which led me to the history of disaster studies. And I've been reading about the Halifax explosion of 1917, and I'm completely obsessed with all this stuff.
Well, I'm completely obsessed with her. I've read her book, When the Dust Settles, and I interviewed her earlier this year, and she was the sweetest, loveliest person while talking about how do you make sure that you have enough body bags for natural disasters? How do you plan for a devastating fire? How do you plan for a pandemic? And it's not just her as my person I admire, it's also the sort of hidden industry of disaster planners and those who go in and pick up the pieces, because there have been so many events recently, obviously COVID, the Grenfell fire, natural disasters, looking at the public inquiry into Lucy Letby and the NHS, where you think, okay, we all saw this happening, but there are people involved who are actually trying to make sense of these horrific things and to support survivors and victims' families and to try and work out what we can do so this doesn't happen again. And we never hear from them. We hear from the politicians who say something must be done. And there are sort of hidden underclass of people who try and make the world a little bit safer and a tiny bit less devastating while facing human tragedy on a daily basis. And I think that's incredibly inspirational. And I absolutely could not do it.
No, it's often quite sort of independently minded crusading types rather than agencies as well. It reminds me of something I reported years ago about, crowd safety at concerts and football matches and so on, and how a lot of the most important figures there were just people that they had been to a gig. They was a survivor of a crush somewhere, and they made it their life's work to kind of work out all these really, sensible, practical, but often, really quite sort of grim
Yeah.
Studies and measures that you take in order to prevent it happening again.
And that is actually her story that she tells in the book, of being at university and there being some student event and there was a crush and there was a student who fell down a flight of stairs and either died or was very, very badly injured, and watching the university not respond to that in a way that was either helpful for that individual's family or kind of acknowledging that something had gone wrong and making it better for the future. And she kind of decided that she wanted that accountability. Someone has to push for it. And I think you're seeing that a little bit with the NHS at the moment in the Lucy Letby case, where what needs to happen is for people to be very upfront about, this is what went wrong, this is how we make sure it doesn't happen again. And instead you're getting lawyering up, passing the buck. It definitely wasn't my fault. And you need those crusaders to go, it's not about blame, it's about saving lives in the future.